Hi, I'm Jason Hoffman, owner of 203 Pet Service, and this is lesson 3 of our puppy training class. So last week we worked on our puppy come game, where we'd have the dog kind of follow us from one end of the room to the other. We also worked on luring the sit, and we also worked on loose leash walking last week as well. The beginning of that, where we were feeding our dog and we were trying to get our dog to walk with his head straight up. And we would treat and treat and treat. Remember that we always treat from the same hand that the dog is on. This week we're going to work on, we're going to name the sit. We are going to introduce the down. And we're also going to talk about, getting a drag line for your dog so we can desensitize your dog to a long line. So next week we can work on things like sit stay and or down stay, and we can start to incorporate distance. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Last week we worked on shaping the sit, and when we worked on shaping the sit, we would go and we would have our baited hand and we would just lure, yes, the dog into the sit. And today what we're going to do, yes, is we're going to name the sit. So what I like to do when I name the sit is I like to lure the dog a couple of times. Yes. And what that does is, yes, it gets the dog to say, okay, yes, I know what you want me to do. Yes. And it's going to be more likely to sit. So now I'm going to tell Leo to sit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Leo, sit. Yes. If he sits right away, we're going to give the dog a jackpot reward, which would be 3 treats or more, one after another after another. So I'll show you that jackpot one more time. Sit. Yes. And treat, and treat, and treat. And that's what a jackpot reward is. And it's basically kind of like an exclamation point. I'm really happy with what you did. Now, when you name this behavior, you don't have to name sit, sit. You can name it anything you want. If you want to name sit meatball, you can name it meatball. But you just need to be consistent with that new command after you decide what you're going to name it. So if the dog doesn't sit when you tell the dog to sit, what you're going to do is you're going to tell the dog, and then you're going to wait 2 seconds, and then if the dog still doesn't sit, you're going to lure him. So if he didn't sit, for this instance, I'm going to use a different word, so that way hopefully Leo isn't going to sit for me. So, banana. Okay, so the dog didn't sit, so now I'm going to say, yes. And now he sat, so it just gave him time to process. Now, if he doesn't sit after you tell him then it's going to be sit. In this case, I'm going to use banana, a word that he doesn't know, and he's just going to stand there and do nothing. And then I'm going to tell him and I'm going to wait another 2 seconds, and then I'm going to lure him into that sit. So it'll look like this. Banana. Let's try that again. Back, 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 back. Banana. So he doesn't do anything. So I say, He still doesn't do anything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lure him, yes, into position. All right. Let me show that to you one more time. So banana. The dog does nothing. So he laid down, so it still wasn't what I wanted. And then I'm going to lure him into position. Yes. Okay? So that's how we're going to name it. And then we're just going to do that for a series of times. Sit. Yes. Sit. Yes. When you tell the dog to sit, you want to keep your body quiet. So it actually can be helpful if you put your hands behind your back. Sit. Yes. Now, when you say the word yes, it's very important that you do not move until you're done saying the word. So you say yes, wait a half a second before you move. And what I'll do sometimes, because a lot of times I want to go like this. Yes. Yes. So your dog will see that movement and they're actually going to predict your body language. They're not necessarily listening to the word, they're just watching your body and acting on the language of your body and the other behaviors of other movements that say, oh, when he does this, it means he wants me to sit. So what I'll do is I'll put my hands behind my back, sometimes like this, and I'll hold my hands. So then I'll say yes, and I'll have the treat in my hand, and then I'll present it. But I find that if I hold my hands, it just helps my timing. So we're going to go like this. Let me get a treat in my hand, and oh, hold on, Leo, this way. Stay. Sit. Yes. Treat. Sit. Yes. Sit. Yes. Treat. So by doing this, I'm not using any part of my body to predict what I'm going to do or what my expectation is. So that way Leo has to focus on the word and not me bending over him or me presenting my hand or anything like that. So sit. Yes. Good boy. He's a very good boy. He is. So that's how we do sit. So now that we've worked on sit, the next thing that we're going to work on is we're going to start working on down. And when we work on down, just like with the sit, we're going to work on the behavior first, and we will name the down next week. But some things to think about with teaching your dog how to lay down is you need to decide what words you're going to use for down. A lot of times people run into problems with this, and when their dog jumps up on them, they say down, Fido down, Fido down, every time the dog jumps up. And then when they want to teach the dog to lay down, what they do is they say Fido down. And they're actually making the word down have two separate meanings, and that makes things very confusing for your dog. So it's best to use one word for the behavior of laying down and a different word for the behavior of get off of me, don't jump up on me. So I like to use the word off. So if my dog jumps up on me, I say off, off. If my dog is laying down, I'll say down. And when I tell the dog to lay down, since I'm only using that one word for laying down, he says, oh, I want to lay down. Or if I say off, it means, oh, get off me. I can also use the word off if I am doing something like, well, let's say the dog's not allowed on the furniture and he's on the couch. And I can say, Leo, off. Basically, off is going to mean get off of whatever you are on. So I hope that gives you a little clarity on using particular words for particular behaviors. But it's really important. Please don't have one word be the meaning for two separate behaviors, because that's going to cause some confusion. So let's get started with the teaching the dog how to lay down. And when we teach a dog to lay down, there's two ways to make a dog lay down. One way is to make the dog lay down from the sit. The other way is to make the dog lay down straight from the stand. I think and I feel it's better to teach the dog to lay down from a stand, which isolates that behavior. So when we start off shaping the down, we want to try to exclusively get the dog to lay down from a standing position, which will make it its own behavior. Sometimes what people will do is they will teach their dog how to sit, and then they'll put him into a sit, and then they'll lure him into a down, and then I think the dog sometimes gets confused because they don't know exactly what you want, so they start offering multiple behaviors, which is good because it tells you that the dog is trying to please you and is working for you, but it just means that the dog is unclear as to the vocabulary and what word means what. So to work on the down, let me get my dog Leo again. Leo! Hey buddy, good boy. So what we're going to do is to lure into the down from a standing position. Let me get you over here. What we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to lure down kind of into a more of a puppy play bow and lift your hands. Yes. And that's how we do it from the stand. So, yes. So again, down toward, no. down towards his paws, lift your hand up a little bit, yes, and treat. So that's how we lure the dog into a, yes, into a down. Now, another way to do it, and if your dog is having a hard time doing that, then what I like to do is if I do have to put the dog into a sit, I like to make it a fluid movement so I'm not stopping in the sit position. So it'll look like this. So we'll lure into the SIT, yes, and straight down. See how I'm not stopping? Stand. Yes. See how I didn't stop when I went into the sit position. Stand. Good. So we'll go into the, and straight down. Yes. Yes. Touch. Good. Yes. So that is the less preferred method. Stand. Good. Good. Yes. And that is the preferred method. One more time. So here. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. He's such a good boy. Yes. All right, you can get everything. Good boy. Good boy. He's a very good boy. So that's how we start to shape and teach the down position. When we train, I like to always use a 6-foot long leash, and it can be nylon or it can be leather. It's your choice, but if you have a dog that's still chewing at your leashes, I would not recommend using a leather leash. So this is what we're going to be using. When I've been demonstrating, I haven't had Leo on a leash just because I have a limited area to work in and I just don't know if it's going to be in the way. But next week, what we're going to use, or what I'm going to have everybody use, is I want everyone to get a long leash or a long line or a check cord. And basically all it is it's a leash which is at least 10 feet long or longer. And we're going to connect it to our dog so that way when we work on sit stays, we'll be able to incorporate distance, and if the dog breaks position, we'll still have a control over him. So for next week, it's going to be really important that we have a long line. And I would recommend that you go and get one this week, and I would like you to connect it to your dog so that way he can drag it around outside or in the house just to desensitize your dog to the leash, so that way when you put it on for the first time, he's going to understand what it is and when you're training, and he's not going to be distracted by this long leash that's connected to him. So for next class, everyone's going to need to have a long line and do your homework this week and start to desensitize your dog to that leash. So when we work with it next week, it's going to be easier to work with the long line and your dog. This week, remember that we worked on naming our sit. We also worked on shaping our down, but we're not using the word down yet. So the only word that we're using in our dog vocabulary this week should be either the word yes, which means thank you, I like what you've done, you're now going to get paid. The word I'm sorry, I didn't like what you did, let's try again. Or the word sit, which obviously means we want the dog to sit. Next week, we are going to formally name the down. Remember, we're also continuing to work on the touch, the food luring, the focus, the walking nicely with their head straight up. So we're still working on all of those things, but the big things that we're working on this week is naming the sit and shaping the down. Remember, 5 minutes, 4 times a day minimum. No longer than 10 minutes per session, and you can train more than 4 times a day. You just need to have little breaks in between the training sessions. Next week, we are going to name the down, and we're going to work on sit stay, and those are going to be the big things that we're going to work on next week. See you next week.